One, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three. So, I am Dr. Maria Kempinska, and I am absolutely delighted to have Jack Milner as my guest for Comedy Wisdom. Do you know what, Jack? I have known you for donkey's years, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
I think donkey's years are even longer than they were before.
Oh, they've just gone on and on and on. Donkey's
Yeah,
years,
it's
forever now.
also that so much has happened recently, hasn't it?
Mm.
Sort of, I know, people that I've known in the comedy world for so long, but the world is changing so quickly that what was, sort of a decade now seems there's so much crammed into a decade that it feels like a century. So, but so much has happened, and as I say, in the comedy world, and it's great to be talking to you about the world of comedy, that you have created something quite different, but you are actually, just to say, let everybody know, you're a comedian, you're a comedy writer, but also you use humor for organizations and cultures and transformation, and you've gone into that world. So my first question is, why did you leave the stand-up world? What made you do that transition, or were you beckoned into the world of the corporate scene?
Yeah, I'd love to say that, some corporates came and said, come on, we need.
Yeah, we need
And
you.
yeah, I guess it was spotting an opportunity. I mean, I was doing stand up, as you say, and uh, I'd actually got to a point where I was doing too many other things
Uh-huh.
and juggling too many balls. And I did a gig. I remember doing a gig over towards Bath, and I wasn't great. And it was that sense of oh, slight embarrassment with the other comics from me. And then I, went home and said to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, that wasn't great. So I actually got another booking there,
Mm.
and I thought I'm going to knock it out of the park, and then that will be it. Which is what I did. And fortunately, there was one of the other guys was there, and it was a nice way, sort of fist bump. That's that's us. That's me done. I mean, I've did little bits after that, but you know what I mean. That was sort of because
What made you knock it on the head? Was it because you wanted to have the high of that last
I
comedy
wanted,
memory?
yeah, I wanted to go out on a high, and I recognized that to be really really good, you have to put in a lot of work, and you have to have a, and you also have to have that. I think almost more important, you have to have a hunger,
Yeah.
almost an obsessive need to do it. And when you see that you don't have that in yourself, I think you're actually better off doing moving elsewhere. And really, also at the same time, I got an invitation from a private bank within Citibank to work with some of their analysts. The people who do that 7:30
Mm.
presentation in the morning type
Yeah.
thing. And this is the days of VHS. So he said, look at these videos, and there was about 30 of them on this videos. Give me a critique, and then if I like your critique, I'll get you in to do some work for me. And I did I did the stuff, and then I did the workshops with the analysts, and it seemed to go okay. And I was sharing a flat with a guy who worked for Deutsche Bank, and he said, "Well, how much did you charge for that?" And I said, "Well, a little bit more than I would charge a theatre for a workshop or an art centre. A bit." I thought, oh, if they're a bank, they've got a bit of money.
Mm.
I'll add a little bit on to what I would normally. And so I told him, and he went, "What? You've not remotely charged enough, and you need to." So that was a oh,
Good
you
money.
can make money here at
Which
this.
year was this then?
This would be probably 90
Yeah.
late 90s. So it was business seeing the link, because what the guy wanted me to do was to get them being human, get them being natural. He
Mm.
said, I just want them to be less boring.
Mm.
He
Mm.
said, at 7:30 in the morning, they're talking to brokers, and the brokers are half asleep,
Mm.
and everyone in the room is half asleep. And if they are not getting across the requisite information in the 5 minute spots they have, which like they are like little spots, they might be talking about EasyJet or whatever it might be,
Mm.
then they're not doing their job.
Mm.
And so that was, he said, there's a link between stand up. So it was this guy seeing the link before I did.
Yeah.
I just went, oh, it's a job. It'll probably be
Mm.
fun.
Mm.
And and then I did off and on for a little while, and then uh, a mate, the same guy actually, said, look, you've got a business. You need to do something with this. And that was over 20 years ago now.
Mm.
And that's when I started taking it
Mm.
seriously. And actually, the longer I've been doing it, the more I've realized that the stuff you can learn from stand up, improvisation, particularly storytelling.
Yeah.
A good comic has an unbelievable ability to concertina a piece of information into a very, because a joke is basically, even a one line joke is a mini story.
Yeah. It's shorthand, isn't it?
Yes, it's a and
Mm.
and it's and it needs to be clear. You need
Yeah.
to be clear. If no one understands what you're saying, then you're not going to get any laugh. So those skills can be transferred across to business. Actually, as I say, the longer I've been doing it, the more I've realised how relevant it is.
Mm. And do you find that because I started Jongleurs in 1983, and by the 90s, the corporates were desperate for comedy in all sorts of spheres, but we didn't
Mm,
have the plethora of comedians that we do now,
no, no.
of course. And comedians, I think, are suffering from the art of stand-up. They haven't got the as many clubs to do the development of what they need. So it's great that you've taken it into the corporate world. But when we were doing corporates, exactly that is teaching people, how to do stand up and the just the benefit of it. But you now teach. So were you also a writer apart from your own stand up? You were writing your own. And which style, which genre did you do? Because when I was doing my MA, I did psychological types in stand up comedy. We've spoken about that,
Mm.
put people into four categories. So you do, your one-liners, and then you do your bawdy stuff, and then you do your surreal, and then you do the people that sort of are jugglers or singers or something like that. So were you a one-liner?
No, I was very, very. When I was
Mm.
doing stuff that was decent, I was very, very silly.
Right,
Very, very. And
not
a
quite
mistake,
Harry Hill,
but even sillier.
even
Um,
sillier.
even yeah, really, really. But I didn't have he's so clever the way he does callbacks, so
Mm.
and all of that. I didn't have that structure that he's so. But yeah, it was really, really silly. A lot of it was improvised in the
Mm.
moment. Lots of props.
Mm.
Actually, lots of stuff. When I was running stand-up courses, lots of the things I would tell stand-ups not to do.
Oh,
I said,
really? Right.
yeah, well, I said, don't take loads of props with you. Yes, if that's what the key thing is you have to be funny,
Yeah.
as we know. And that's something that sometimes people forget
Yeah, they
when
do.
they go, oh, I want to share my view of the world. I want to do this and that. No, in the end, if you're not funny, you won't work.
Mm.
And people who are really, really funny, it might be old fashioned or whatever. It doesn't really matter. They will get bookings.
Mm.
And it was partly practical because you know um I remember seeing one guy, and he brought a quite big case along to a gig, and I said, what that's for? He says it's for a joke. And he came on, and he said, see, this is my mate, he's a case, and dropped it, and he got a small laugh.
Mm.
But I thought, you've taken this all the way across London,
So that's
put it
small
on
world.
for one small laugh. You don't need to do that. You can think, use your brain and come up with something
Mm.
funny which doesn't require a whole suitcase. So and that was partly, it was just partly, practicalities, and often sometimes it can be a bit of a lazy way of I'll get a laugh. I can't get a laugh through what I say or even what I do, but I can get a laugh from a prop. And you know, Harry Hill is a genius. There's a difference. There's a big difference. So when he's doing something to, you know, some of the other stuff you can get sometimes. So that's all. So
What
yeah,
sort
very,
of,
very silly.
what sort of props did you carry around then?
I had all sorts. I had costume things. I had sometimes swords. I would uh, plants, um, just and puppets
I
and
think in those days, in the 90s, there were a lot of people, late 80s and 90s, there were a lot of comedians that were doing all sorts of crazy stuff like that.
yeah, there was a lot more.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Maria. Yeah, I mean, you remember those? There were you could. There was a lot more bonkers
yeah,
stuff.
which was really just funny because
Funny, yeah. I mean, and I do think. I mean, I don't. You see many more comedians than me,
Mm.
um, but I do think the overall standard is higher now. You know, you you could get away with just being a bit bonkers and getting a few laughs.
Well, I don't know if you're right about that, in my opinion. I don't.
Okay.
I went to a comedy show the other day, and there were three comedians, and the first two, the compare was as a compare should be, engaging, blah blah blah. She was quite good. The first person was, yeah, same old, same old. So I've heard so much stand up. The
Yeah.
second person was disappointing. And then the third person was good. So I think that people are still struggling, because I think that they don't have any mechanism by which to judge themselves against, apart from whether they get onto television or, the whole thing now is doing a 5 minute slot on a Michael McIntyre show or, something like
Yeah.
that. So, I don't know. I'm always disappointed actually in modern comedy. When people say to me, who's your favorite? Who would to me, it's like, who would I pay to go and see? But, that's the whole thing.
Mm,
I think people are not getting lazy. I think they've lost their direction. So this is good where you're going.
yeah. I think sometimes, you know, sometimes listening to what you're saying there, sometimes I think people are so, it's so much about the career
Mm,
and the business
mm,
rather than this is what I think is funny. This
mm.
is my funny. And by God, I'm going to do my funny. And there's less, consequently, I think I was going to say there's less, definitely less variety than there used to be. Less people coming from a completely where you go, I've never seen anything like that before. I remember seeing Eddie Izzard for the first time, you know, just before he became massive, and thinking, you are incredible. And the risks he was taking and the risks
But he'd
was,
already started in late 80s. He says it was 90s. I think it was 80s when I was speaking to him.
I
And
think it was late. I think it was late 80s as well.
yeah. And I think that he's always been slightly off center, if you like. And I think he started on the streets. So that gave him a lot of confidence,
Mm,
sort of Covent Garden and things. And I think that's where you risk everything. But I think the comedy scene allowed that. So I had the People Show. I had people like him, also, people like Jerry Shadowitz
yeah.
was there, a lot of people that were very s- sort of dangerous. Lee Evans, obviously, when he started. I was talking to Rory the other day, Rory Bremner, who started way back. And, I don't know if they'd have got on. Well, Rory would have done, Lee might have done. Some of them.
Jerry Sadovitz definitely wouldn't. Well, he
No,
doesn't now. I mean, you
no,
know what
but
I
I
mean? But
think he is one of the masters of comedy.
yeah,
And he's always been put to a side, and I think it's tragic.
yeah, no, I completely agree. Um, he's because it is so hard to do. He, you know, he's not going for easy laughs,
Mm.
and to put yourself out there knowing that a percentage of the audience are going to hate you,
Well, particularly today.
particularly today,
Mm,
and to keep doing it.
mm,
And he said himself, you know, he doesn't have to do that, but
mm,
he wants to. And you know, when I'm talking to occasionally upcoming comics will ask me you know, to have a chat. And I'll say for me anyway, the most important thing is you do your stuff. And the biggest mistake I made, when I started my early 20s, I did quite well quite quickly.
mm.
And I was writing for, uh, you know, I suppose, mainstream people like Little and Large and people like that,
Yeah.
and Freddie Starr and folk. And I was and I sort of went down a little dangerous cul-de-sac of trying to write what I thought other people would think was funny. And the more that I did that, the less funny I became.
Mm, mm.
And I'd pretty much given up, or got to the point of thinking, well, maybe it's a young person's thing. I can't do it. This was in the early 2000s. And I had a play called The Mummy, which Hackney Empire were
Mhm,
interested in doing as a horror, just as a horror piece.
mm.
And the guy who ran it there, a lovely guy called Simon Thompson, said, "Whatever you do, Jack, don't make it funny." You know, that. And I said, "Look, don't worry, Simon, I can't. I can't. Even if I wanted to, I can't." And he said, "Yeah, but we'd be really interested in producing it." And I had a reading booked at the Soho Theatre, and I was reading through the script a month before the reading, and I just thought, this is the most biggest load of crap. It's so boring.
Mm.
And there was just one scene in it that worked, which I'd written for my own entertainment, which was a short, funny scene, which I thought I'd cut, but just because I was so bored writing this thing.
Mhm.
And I thought, that's the only bit that works. I'm going to write it. This might be the end of my career, but I'm going to write the whole thing funny. I
Mm,
just won't tell Simon. And I managed to do act one funny, did the rehearsals, and I thought, this is funny. And because I had nothing to lose, I just did what I saw as funny. So it was very, very silly. And then we did the reading, and the audience, you know, it was that love, that feeling that, you know, why people say, "Oh, this is why I do it." You know, where the audience, you can feel them rocking. It's
mm.
that massive laughs. Came to the interval, which was actually the end. I was just thinking about it because we only did the first. And I looked over to Simon, and Simon walked out. And
Oh,
then his finance guy came over and said, "What the fuck have you done? You idiot!" And then off he went. And then about 3 months later, the finance guy was working at Liverpool Royal Court, and I got a call from them saying we'd like to buy it as a comedy. Now, they didn't produce it. It was produced in the end. A few years later, it was produced. It has gone on in Argentina, did 6 months over there, has gone on in other countries around, you know, has done really well. And on in the UK, was on recently. And it, and I'm now mates with Simon again. Simon's forgiven me.
tell me, how did you get into it then? What did you study?
I
Or were
didn't.
you naturally gifted? Did you sort of get to your teenage years and start writing instead of listening at school, or what were you doing?
I was. Yeah. I think I used to love writing. I used to write really depressing stuff
Mm,
up until about the age of 14. You know, classic teenage
thanks.
angst. Yeah, we're all gonna die, and what's the point? Yeah. And then we had a brilliant teacher, Mr. Self, and he got us to do this exercise on where you got a load of random things were part of an opening paragraph, and he said, right, you've written all these random things as part of an opening paragraph that sort of makes sense but is ridiculous. Now make a complete story from that. It was a great creativity exercise.
Mm.
And he said, I just want 2 pages, just 2 pages. And I went away and I went back because I was boarding. I went and did my homework, carried on writing, and I hid in the airing cupboard, which had a light, at 2 o'clock in the morning, writing. And I handed in 20 pages. And then the following week, he was handing out the books, handing them back. And he said, I'm going to keep yours, Milner. I'm going to keep hold of yours. And I thought, oh no, he's going to be so cross because I've done so much. And he said, right, rest of the class, I'm going to read out Milner's essay. And he read it out, and I was sat at the back, and I can remember people's backs right in front
Rocking.
of me, rocking.
Great.
And I thought, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So it
I don't know
totally
how I'm
worked.
going to do it, but that thing, that feeling, I want for the. That's what I want.
Okay, so that's a great story because you captured the moment that you gave birth to that side of yourself. Where does that come from in you?
Where's it come from? I think looking back when I was at primary school, even at prep school. I remember some slightly older boys coming up to me. I was about 10. It was very pompous. People at prep school then were very, very pompous. And they came up and said, Milner, Milner, over here, over here.
Mm.
I went, yes, yes, what is it? What is it? Yes, we've just had a discussion between us. You know how 11-year-olds at prep school in those days would talk as though they were corporate bankers. We've just had a discussion between ourselves, and we've decided that you are the funniest boy in the school. And we just thought you should know that. Right. Well, anyway, go off you go, off you go. And so that was so I must have been doing stuff that made people. I was really into, like a lot of kids at that time, really into Python, and my mum used to make me listen to the Goon Show,
Ah,
recording, repeats.
do you know, it's quite interesting you saying that about mothers because both, and I'm sure there's loads more, but Russell Brand and Robin Williams, and I even think Jimmy Carr up to a point, all wanted to make their mothers laugh. And Robin Williams used to say that it was him creating a connection with his mother. And it's almost if the mother gives the child permission to laugh and and laughter is permitted in the household like that,
Mm.
it sort of gives it the rubber stamp to go. But here you had those older boys doing it as well. So this was the mark of you as that sort of future comedian.
Well, something was going. Yes, something. My dad was very funny.
Ah.
So my mum was very. She had a wonderful sense of humor and quite a wicked sense of humor.
Mm.
Yeah, quite Dame Edna like in some ways.
Mm.
But my dad, he in the 60s, he was a successful surreal playwright.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Pat Routledge died yesterday,
Yes, yes, that's
very
very
sadly.
sad. She was a wonderful actress.
Wonderful, wonderful, very funny actress. But his play, How's the World Treating You, gave her her Broadway break. And it was, at the time, it was seen as very much part of that surreal movement
Mm.
of, that had started with Spike Milligan and then been taken on
Mm.
by the Cambridge, Cook
Footlights.
and yeah, Dudley
Ah.
Moore and people like that. And
Mm-mm.
he's part of that. And
It's
so
one of
he,
those. Oh,
part of that. So and he did a lot of, yeah, funny plays, and he was a genuinely very funny man. But he lost his comedy mojo after he had a horrendous car accident in the early 70s, and
oh.
then just and he didn't write anything funny after that. He then went into writing TV dramas and things like that, but
Mhm.
that he said his confidence went. He just lost that feeling of, I can write, I can sit down and write funny. And so he then made a alternative career writing serious, very serious TV dramas and docudramas and things like that.
So
But
that worked for him.
and that worked for him. But he, as I say, he was, and he was not. I think part of me, I was trying to please him, make him laugh.
Yeah. Was he? So that must have been quite a profound accident for him then.
It was her. Yes, it was for the whole family. He he was in hospital for months. He very, very, very nearly died.
Gosh.
And yeah, um,
How
and
old?
he was badly disfigured as well afterwards.
Mm,
So lots of, he had lots of plastic surgery, and I think
wow.
he, I mean, now now he would have support and counselling and,
Mm, mm.
but in those days, of course, there was, you fixed the bones and you fixed the face as much as you could, and then you went, well, okay, get on with your life.
Yeah.
And I think it took him a very many, many, many years to recover. I
Mm,
think looking, you at the time, I just thought he was quite bad tempered
yeah.
for a long time, and then as you become an adult yourself and have kids and things, you go, oh,
That's what happened.
that's what happened. Poor man was trying to provide for his family
Mm,
after going through, because somebody else died in the car accident.
gosh.
He was flung from the top of the car onto a tree. So when the ambulance arrived, they couldn't find. They knew there was somebody else had been in somebody else's car, and they found him. He was up in a branch of a tree, and everything had been broken. Pretty much every part of his body was
My
broken.
goodness. How old were you,
So
Jack?
hmm,
How old were you?
I was 8 years old.
Wow.
So I was just starting prep school
Yeah.
at the time, and I was supposed to. So my mum went to stay with him as much as she could. He was in Norwich, and we were up in Shropshire. So I boarded while she would go, and
Mm,
my brothers would stay with family friends or whatever, and she would go and see him
mm,
and be with him as much as possible,
mm,
because it was, as I say, it was several months. He came back. I remember him. The accident was in September, and he came back just before Christmas from hospital, and yeah, and it was, and I remember him walking through the front door, and he was really, I mean, he had bits of wire and stuff around his face, and he'd lost his nose, which was then rebuilt, but so he was badly disfigured.
mm.
And my brothers, who were younger than me, just burst into tears and ran away, which must have been
Yeah,
horrible for him.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I tried to pretend that there was nothing different, that
Mm,
he, he looked okay, but he must have seen the shock in my face
mm, mm.
at the time.
And then
Um,
he had to, so did he work from home mostly?
yeah, he had a study in the off the hallway, and you could hear his typewriter, tick
Yeah.
tick 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 tick,
Mm,
and then occasionally come out and shout, go, if we were playing outside,
mm,
I'm trying to earn us some fucking money,
mm.
and then back in. Yeah.
It's quite interesting how a profound, an event like that can, how it affects everybody. But you
Mm,
come to the understanding, obviously, as a psychotherapist, I deal with this all the time. There's not one person in this world that doesn't have a story somewhere,
mm,
and that's such an interesting story, but also moving, very moving story, because the repercussions of that accident and what it does to a family and what it did to your relationship with your father and what it did to his relationship with his art and his creativity
yeah.
all fall apart just through that one accident.
It was one moment. Yeah, one secretary she'd had too much to drink. They were
Oh,
shoot on location,
oh.
filming. You
And
could,
she
I
was
think,
driving, was she?
and she was driving,
Yeah.
and yeah, and he said, she was driving about 80 miles an hour down these country lanes,
Mm,
and they skidded off the road. Um, and yeah, and as you say, that one moment changed our lives, because
mm,
it, he didn't start earning again for another 2 or 3 years, and he'd been doing very well before then.
mm, mm,
He'd been, life was treating him well and treating
mm,
the family well, and that changed, yeah, changed dramatically. And then he had to get back into He eventually got back into acting because he was an actor.
Right.
So he's you can see him in Brideshead Revisited.
Oh, fantastic. I'll look out for
Yeah,
him.
he's in more episodes than anyone else apart from Jeremy Irons.
Great.
So he plays the butler.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
So you can
Always,
see,
oh, they're almost like the backbone of any series like that, aren't they?
yeah, you need
Oh, talking about butlers, you know, in oh gosh, what's the famous one that's been on recently? Oh, why is it Downton
Downton Abbey.
Abbey? Jim Carter.
Yes.
He did a set for me at Jongleurs in the 80s, early 80s. I saw him at Stratford East. Maureen Lipman was the host. It was some sort of fundraising event. I won 30 quid actually at a raffle. And I knew that I'd won it when she said, at that time, she was reading out people that had won the raffle. And she said, oh, there's James Smith. So James Smith, you've won 30 quid. And then she goes, oh, there's Mary Jones, you've won. And then there's Maria. I thought that's me because she couldn't say my surname. Or, you know, it
Yeah,
took
yeah.
a little bit of time to, oh, it's a different name. But she was lovely. And I saw Jim Carter there and I said, oh, you must come and do a set for me at Jongleurs. And he used to turn up with Imelda Staunton, I think they were married then, they're still married. And she used to carry his suitcases. He used to carry his, she used to carry his behind him. And this couple have been together forever and they were amazing. And he's got this booming voice,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
got this majestic voice. And he did almost a Tommy Cooper-esque type of show with magic. And things would drop out and everything like that. But he was absolutely brilliant,
Mm,
you know, when he did that. So he was, you know, but then quickly made it onto television, and now they're both global stars, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
fabulous to see. But now he's the butler. But he make, you know, they make such a difference, don't they, to those programs?
Mm,
You know, they are the stability in a way.
yeah, yeah.
They're the line that tells you, have they gone over the Rubicon? Have they not?
Hmm.
You always need that character. And your
Yeah,
father
yeah.
is one of those. Brilliant. We'll look out for him. Is he still alive, Jack?
No, no, he died 10 years ago.
Ah,
Yeah.
always such a big loss, isn't it?
Mm.
But then somehow it brought out your ability to be funny.
Yeah, I think
When
I
did
think
you
he's
become conscious of that?
when did I become conscious?
Mm.
I think when I went to drama school, it was I became conscious that I could do I couldn't not just write funny,
Mm.
but I could be funny
Mm.
was definitely, yeah, definitely at drama school. Because I I got turned down by lots, and I did some spectacularly bad auditions, and I'd got finally got into ALRA, Academy of Live and Recorded Arts,
Mm.
and I just thought, well, everyone there will be better than me, and I'll just survive by the skin of my teeth, sort of thing. And then I thought, oh, actually, I'm not that bad, and my confidence gradually grew, and I discovered that I could do funny.
Mm.
I could make people laugh, and I think a lot of that is instinctive. You know, the lovely comedy actor Pierce Quigley.
Mm.
He's going to be starring. He's starring in a Mackenzie Crook
Great actor as
sitcom.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming out. Anyway, Pierce, I think he's one of the best, if not the best, comedy actor in the country.
Mm.
And we were having a chat one day, and then he said, directors are always saying to an actor, when he's doing comedy, oh, just play it straight. Just play it straight. That's all you have to do. Just play the truth of it. Just the truth of it. He said, but we know that's not the case. Yes, of course it has to be truthful, but there's that extra bit that you add that's funny.
And how do you see that? What did he see and what do you see?
I think that's the thing. I might well be wrong about this, but
Mm.
I don't think you can teach that bit.
No.
I think you either have that bit
Mm.
or you don't really have it. And some people have it, bucket loads of it. You know, something like Jim Carter. There's an instinct in Pierce where they just know how tweak a line a little bit that way, and it's very, very funny. And you know, I was watching the extraordinary Will Ferrell
Mm.
clip of him speaking at the Oscars or something, you know, while I was procrastinating about doing something else, and on YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever. But I just thought, yeah, whatever you do, there's a sincerity to it, but it's just funny, and I think that is instinct. I think you can't be a lot of that. You can't be taught. But one thing that directors are right about is that it still has to come from a place of truth. And often when you're working with younger actors who are, you know, they're doing a comedy, they go, oh right, what I need to do is make it funny.
Mm.
No, at first you've got to make it truthful, and then it will be quite funny for
Mm.
sure. If it's written funny, it'll be quite funny. But then if you want to get that extra level of magic that somebody like Pierce can do, then that's, you know, where it goes beyond what the writer imagined. So the writer's written something that's hopefully quite funny.
Mm.
I remember it's like Richard Curtis said about he said his rule for life and advice to all writers was, if possible, get Hugh Grant to be in your movie,
Yeah, yeah. Because
because
he's not that foppish.
he can do funny.
But he's now doing serious, which is
He's
great.
now I think he's one of the most brilliant actors ever.
Now, yeah, he's really
Yeah,
showing that side of
definitely.
him, which is great to see.
Yeah.
But how do you do it? Well, how do you know when you're writing something and you're still a writer and you're adding a line, do you go through it? Do you write the whole structure, the outline, and then do you add one-liners? Do you add to it, or does it all come in the framework? Does it come as you write everything, or do you sort of
Uh,
do you get the
yeah, yeah.
outline first and then you say, right, I've got to add a one-liner there or add something here?
I good good question. As you can tell, I've not really thought this through before, but when I'm writing, I think partly it's trusting yourself.
Mm.
So if I'm writing silly stuff, I'm writing a lot of the time. You hear you hear the character's voice, or something like a character's voice in your head, and that helps you a lot. But then, and I hope this doesn't sound pretentious, but when I'm writing, it's almost like I let the pen do the work, or the
Yeah,
keyboard.
no. So if you go into that zone,
You
so
go
to
into that
speak,
zone, so you write the setup,
yeah,
and you don't actually know what the punchline's going to be. Or
right,
I don't. Quite
yeah,
often I don't. So I know a lot of comedy writers will start with a punchline.
mm.
You know, particularly if you're creating what might call the archetypal joke. You start with a punchline and work your way back
Okay.
to this setup
Mm,
that
mm,
leads to that gorgeous moment.
mm,
But I will definitely just trust that something silly will come up,
mm.
something that will make it funny, and that's lovely because and Rebecca, my wife, she says sometimes, she says it's she says you what can when you're if you're writing in the living room or something late at night, you've got your laptop out or something, and you can see you laughing at your own jokes
Oh, how lovely.
as you're
That works. Yeah,
yeah, and
great,
I am my best audience, I should say.
great.
If a play of mine's on,
No, but
it's I've been laughing away, and not always it's not always the case that the audience is as well at the same time, but yeah, hopefully, usually. But you know, yeah, that's definitely if there's a process, that's it. And then when you're going through it again and again and again, you're tweaking and touching up and shortening and fine tuning. And I don't know about you, Maria, but that is part of the fun.
and you know what, when you were saying about doing stand up, and I think this is where you're absolutely right, that if you do stand up properly, you've got to, I say this because, you know, I teach people to do stand up more for mental health reasons.
Yeah,
And as I teach it in Brentford Football Wellness Centre. But I do one-to-ones as well, but it's more taking whatever something they've gone through and to just transform it into something else. And I say, in order to do this, you've got to respect the process. And there's a lot of people that take it for granted, that process, of respecting the craft. And I think once people do respect the craft, they get the best of themselves into it. But that also tells you how much work has to be put into it. Because I did 10 minutes. This is how my whole thing about understanding comedy for both sides, in a way, from being, the person who books all the comedians to actually doing it, was such an eye opener for me personally, because I did 10 minutes and I had Sean Mayo, he helped me with the structure and a few of the,
Mm-hmm.
and then added to that. But it certainly opened my eyes into how you deliver the experience on being on stage, waiting for the audience to respond. I just did one-liners, actually. I was so nervous. Oh my gosh. I cannot tell you how nervous I was. But at the end, somebody came over to me, and somebody I knew who was an agent said, Maria, let me represent you. And I thought, that's crazy. If I were to do that, you have to put your heart and soul into it, because I'm like you're that type of person that wants to do it well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to give time, you've got to make it work. And the time that goes into writing a set, so important to do it well.
You're so right about the process. It's trust the process. Your first draft, you might think, oh, this is pretty damn good. You wait till you do your second draft and then your third draft or whatever, and you work and you work and you work at it. And I do a lot of work now with execs and people,
Mm,
well, all sorts of different people on their public speaking or keynote speaking, and sometimes some of those are professional, are some are not. One of the hardest things to get across is to trust the process.
mm.
That session one, we are not going to get the finished article, at, but we will get to the finished article as long as you trust the process and put the work in,
Yeah.
and then you will come up with a 20-minute speech or 40-minute, whatever it is, that is moving and
Mm.
funny and lands the points you want to make, and all of that. Uh, but unless you put that time in and the work, uh, and allow the stuff to happen.
Yeah, I do get disappointed. I get very disappointed with people who want to be, oh, I want to be a presenter, I want to be this, or I want to do stand up, and they don't do the work. I'm so disappointed when you've got that person around you that could put the work in, that should put the work in,
Mm.
like half painting a wall. And inviting everybody into your dining room. Oh, look at my dining room. I've just repainted it. Well, no, you haven't. You
No,
really-
I've done that. Look at
yeah,
that bit. It's amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
that bit is.
yeah,
But the rest of it's just like, what
yeah.
have
Or
you
after
done?
dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, you just chucked your dinner
Here's
at
a
it. Yeah.
pudding. Yeah, here's a pudding. Well, what's the starter? Oh,
Mm.
no, I haven't quite got to that bit. No, I don't like people misunderstanding, but I think you have to set the program, don't you? You have to. Than when you
Yes.
deal with people. So
Yeah.
when you deal with corporates, because yours is such a fantastic uh, sort of trajectory that you've got, so you use humor to transform organizations and cultures. That's a big step.
Yes. So when it comes to helping organizations change the culture,
Mm,
obviously, you've run and been on the board of a number of organizations, big
mm,
businesses, etc. So you know that there's more that goes into a business than being able to than a, members of the team being able to make each other laugh and having a bit of a laugh.
mm.
Of course there is. But you can make a huge difference to the to the vibe and the success of the organization, and it doesn't cost you any money to help people, to value people. That's what it starts with.
Mm.
Yes, what it ends up with is people who are happier, and there is more laughter and appreciating that laughing and enjoying each other's company is actually part of the magic that's propelling them to a special place. It's but it starts with an organization has to value its people, and um this the idea for it actually came for working with businesses and helping them add humor and have more fun. It came from when I was about 19 years old. I'd come down to London to make my fortune, uh, wanting to do right comedy, and I didn't had no idea how I'd get into it or whatever. Anyway, I got a job in a burger bar at Victoria Station, and it was a crap, awful job, really. Working, anyone who's worked for McDonald's or something, it's not great. And my shift manager was the same age as me, 19, and he was a real geezer called Jack Swaysland. And we were 4 shifts at Casey Jones, that was the burger bar. 4 shifts, and we were measured against each other each week on upselling. So in other words, how much we made per customer and how much we made as a shift. And our shift, for the 3 months I was on his, we won every single week. And he used to, the numbers would come up, and then he'd go around to all the other shift managers, taking the mickey out of them, go, oh, well, I've won again, we've won again, oh, we're amazing, we've won again. And they go, oh, you know, how do you do it? How do you do it? And he said, I'll tell you why, because I don't beat my people up, and we have fun, we have a laugh. Now, of course, there was purpose and energy behind that. But we did. I genuinely enjoyed going in on his shift. I genuinely enjoyed it. And I remember thinking, what are you doing that's different to the others? Because we win. Anyway, I've caught up with him 30 odd years later, and he'd become the boss of Papa John Pizzas.
Oh, there you are.
Global chain, and he lived in America at the time. And we got chatting. So he remembered me, and he was very much the same. He was very much the same, still a geezer, even though he lived out in the States. And he said, "Yeah, Jack, you've got to start with people. It's a people business. Any business, it's a people business.
Absolutely.
And part of, if you are valuing your people, it is also that you value them enjoying themselves."
So let me ask you, because it's such an interesting, I totally agree. How do you make sure that the organization, apart from now you've got a track record, because you've done Google, Microsoft, TikTok, Cisco, and a number of others, McCann, and so on. But how do you persuade them or tell them, or what is their fear? Do they always think, well, how do you make it not lightweight, which is the wrong grammar?
How do you make it not like
lightweight, so that people don't think, oh, it's just a laugh, you know, you can disregard everything? How do you make sure that it's taken seriously and as an addition to communication and interaction inside the organization without belittling the organization and its culture itself as well?
No, because you want to be building on what's there. I think so I usually do it plus something. So for instance, I was working with a credit card company recently, and we did a humor session with the marketing team and senior leadership team, and it was plus creativity, but it was helping them use humor first of all to appreciate each other as human beings, and to just enjoy each other's company and to hear each other's stories. So that was partly building. That was about transparency, about there was one person who was sat next to a woman who at the very beginning said, just so you know, Jack, I'm not going to enjoy this. I'm letting you know so that when you see my grumpy face, you don't think, what a cow. It's just, this is not my thing.
mm,
Okay?
mm,
So
mm.
you know. I went, oh, great. That's a good start. Anyway, um, about an hour and a half in, she told this really funny story. And the person sat next to her said, we've worked together for 10 years. And because I said, what does that story give us apart from making us laugh? It's a true story. And the woman sat next to her, I've known her for 10 years. I feel after that one story, I feel like I know her 10 times better
Mm,
than before.
mm.
And that's about trust and things. Because if you're doing, for instance, if you're doing creativity stuff, if you're doing idea generation, if you're working as a team, yeah, of course, in the corporate world, you will have people who are trying to undermine people, but generally speaking, not. Uh, and in their case, that was not the case. And so, but they still didn't have a great amount of trust between the team. And if you're going to build trust, you have to know each other better. And humor is a great shortcut
Absolutely.
into that, and then into, at the end of one session, the marketing team, they did a comedy exercise. It's basically a comedy writing exercise,
Mm,
but leading to marketing ideas. And without wishing to blow my own trumpet, one guy came up to me, the head of marketing, and said, we 6 months we've been looking for our campaign
mm.
theme idea. And you know what? When we started this exercise, after 10 minutes, I thought, what are we doing? This is going to be such a waste of time. It's good fun. We're making each other laugh. 40 minutes later, we've got it. This is what we're going to do. The idea we've come up with, this is it. Because it's completely different to what anyone else is doing. It's counterintuitive. And this is what we're going to do for this particular
So
business in
it
Australia.
resulted in them having the idea. So let me
They
come
would
back.
never have got there. They would
No,
never,
that's what I'm thinking. And I'm going to ask you something you may not have the answer to immediately. And I'm saying this in a good way because often this is what I love about the work I do as a psychotherapist as well, is people don't often recognize what they do, the magic that they bring. Everybody
mm,
has a bit of magic. So there you are, you're doing the workshop, you've created the framework that you know works. And I know every framework is individualized to that particular company. And there's those cynics that sit there and say, I hate this, I've never been funny, can't tell a story.
yeah, yeah.
It isn't going to work. I've got to do it though, because we tried everything else and all of that. And but they get to a point where they're desperate. But you've got, sort of you've got your credentials. So they're trying you.
Yeah.
And then you start them talking and you've got an easygoing attitude. What is it in your magic that encourages them to come out of their shell? What is it in the magic of that woman? Let's take her as an
Mm,
example, which is a great example,
mm,
that enabled her to finally tell a story that was funny, that opened up, as we said, it's shorthand for the world, for your world. Comedy is, if it's done well. What is it you bring to the party that enables people to do that, to open up?
yes. So I think when you started the question, you mentioned about people sometimes you're unaware of what you do,
Mm, mm,
and other people have fed back that what I'm good at is in the first 10 minutes is put everyone at ease, is may everyone go, we're going to be all right. He's going to look after us. We're not going to be exposed. We're not going to look like idiots.
mm,
And I'm a big believer in within the first 15 minutes, everyone in the room has to feel as a business, we've already won.
right.
So in other words, you have to give them, do an exercise, do something where everyone goes, well, even if the rest of this is rubbish, we're up on the deal.
Yeah.
We've got something solid. So you put them at their ease, make everyone feel like, okay, he's going to look after us. He knows what he's doing.
Mm,
This is going to be even if it's the last thing in the world I wanted to do at the beginning of it, it feels like it'll be okay. I'll
Mm.
survive it, and he won't make me look like an idiot. And then once people, the magic actually happens between themselves. It's when they make each other laugh, and then they just, that's that gorgeous thing that you have at a good party or a good dinner party or with just a group of friends, and where no one's saying much that's genuinely funny as jokes, but they're just making each other laugh and loving each other's company, and where it feels like and the person who's an introvert, the one who's, because that can also sound like what I've just described there, can, to some of people listening to this, could sound like, oh god, that's my idea of hell,
Mm.
surrounded by everyone else laughing and I'm not funny and
Mm.
I'm just, and it's not that at all. It's about everyone, you're looking after each other, but but where the person who is a bit shyer or a bit quieter feels included and part of it, and that's so important.
But
I,
okay, so I'm going to throw something else at you. Coming back to the introvert, my MA was in psychological types in stand-up comedy.
mm,
I think we talked about that. And I found that in the pilot study that I did and wrote about was the majority of comedians were introverts.
but yeah.
So that makes everybody feel comfortable. But coming back to the psychology of what you bring to the party, it's much like, as you say, that dinner party. Without the host and the hostess making sure that everything around the table is okay, and whatever house you're in, doesn't matter how rich or sort of how extravagant or
Mm,
ordinary dinner is, it's how the host and hostess make everybody feel.
yeah.
Well, the permission to laugh, if you like, the permission to
Yeah.
have fun, to enjoy yourself. How do you do that? What is it in your personality that brings that? Because you're very easy. You've got a very easy, comforting voice. You've got that sort of round a fireside, let's tell the story
Mm,
voice.
right.
And but you must have that confidence in the group and the structure that you bring to people that says, as you say, everything's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay, and I like people.
Yeah, right.
I'm I'm
Absolutely.
I'm lucky that I like most people.
Mm.
I really, I just do. There's very few people I don't like, and I'll like the group I'm working with. Almost certainly, I'll like everyone in the group,
Yeah.
even the woman who was cussed at the beginning I mentioned. There was something about her I liked straight away.
Mm.
She, her honesty.
So what did
Uh,
you find out? What made her tell her story? What was it? What was that sort of breaking the egg moment for her?
it was because we were just doing. There's an exercise uh, where you get. This is about communication and how
Mm.
we can easily add, for instance, humor to communication. And I say, if you're working for a credit card company
Mm.
in marketing, there are not many funny stories about marketing in credit cards.
Mm.
Yeah. But we all have funny stories, and we all have disaster stories,
Mm.
things that have gone wrong. Yeah. Uh, if you're on holiday, there's anyone listening to this, if you're on holiday and something goes really badly wrong, and it's a complete and utter nightmare, and you're 3 o'clock in the morning locked outside your hotel, it's pouring with rain, and your partner's saying, you are a disaster, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Don't worry, because one day it will make a brilliant story.
Yeah, quite. You want that story, don't you?
Yeah, it will be funny. One day this will be funny.
Mm.
Yeah. By the way, from personal experience, don't say at that precise moment, oh, one
Yes.
day we're gonna
Yes.
as I did on my honeymoon.
But you're still married, so well
But we're
done.
still married. Yeah, we're still married despite that story. But
Well done,
anyway,
Rebecca.
we're well done, Rebecca. She's stuck with it. But yeah, that. So anyway, it was that exercise. It was that exercise where. So what? and then you tie the story, and people can see, you can see great examples with Sir Ken Robinson. So he has the most viewed TED talk in history, very famous TED talk about creativity.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen him actually.
Amazing speaker. He spoke very like a stand-up.
Yeah.
His style of speaking was very stand-upish, and it's the most viewed TED talk. It's got the most laughs per minute, more than most,
Mm,
etc., etc. And he tells at the beginning two funny short stories that have almost nothing to do on the surface with what he's talking about,
mm,
and they're personal stories, and then he bridges from that into the point he's making,
mm,
and everyone goes, oh, that's so clever, that's so brilliant. But it's something, we can all do. We've all got those memories, those stories that we sit around chatting to some friends, might be close friends, whoever it is, and you've had a glass of wine and you share this story and everyone roars with laughter. So I was just getting people to share those disaster stories with each other, so they take away the fear of, come up with something funny.
yeah.
Just tell a story about a bad first date,
Mm,
a bad holiday experience, and it's probably going to be funny. And she told something, I can't remember what the story was,
mm.
but it made the woman she was chatting to roar with laughter and then say, I can't believe it.
Yeah,
We've known
after
each
all
other
this time.
10 years, and that one story, I feel I know her
Mm,
10 times better than I did
mm,
from the beginning of the story. Because when you tell, you do so many things, don't you? When you tell a story about the screw up.
gosh, yeah. If you do,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And as you say, you've got to be truthful to that moment.
yeah, and you have to be truthful to that moment. And yeah, no, the lady who told the story, she was quite dry,
Mm,
definitely very introvert, definitely at the beginning quite cynical,
mm,
but you could tell, you know, just a lovely person underneath it all,
mm,
who cared actually desperately about the business.
mm,
And that was partly why she was slightly irritated at the beginning, because she was like, it costs a lot of money to get all of us into one space at the beginning, and now we're supposed to solve things with working with this funny guy, and I know he's done this and done that, but really? And
yeah.
also, I'm an introvert. This is the last thing.
Yeah.
This is, we're trapped in a room together for all morning with this bloke.
But you know what, Jack? You've said something, and something I've always said about women in the boardroom. When you get to that level, women have got to have a sense of humor.
Mm.
Boardroom, it gives you, and I've always said this to women, and maybe I don't know whether it's because I'm blonde. But sort of I've had women when I've done this, because I used to give out the awards for the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which was fabulous. And I used to say one of the best things any woman can have attribute in business is a sense of humor. Because as soon as you engage with humor, particularly as a woman, I see this men doing this all the time, but particularly as a woman in a boardroom, it breaks the ice.
Mm.
Women are always trying to sort of, how do I make sure that people take me seriously? How do I make sure that people listen? And I say you've got to use humor. And a lot of women are shy away from it, not because I think very often it's not because they see it as trivial, but it's how can it work for me?
Mm.
It's such a big step for a lot of people. But with that, it's just that flippancy. How can I turn something serious, and how can it become flippant without me losing the tone that I know what I'm doing,
Mm.
and that psychology behind it, where I'm afraid of doing that. But I think if people use it correctly in business, you just break the ice in that engagement, because men often do it about football teams, don't they, or rugby. I was at cricket do on Thursday, which is fabulous. Rory Bremner was hosting, and he's
Oh, wow.
still always amazing.
Yeah.
And lots of people on my table and so on. And it's great just to have those conversations. And in those conversations, they're always telling the stories, one-upmanship stories. And it's not a case of one-upmanship. Sport is sport to win. But
Yes.
I love that one-upmanship. Let's make it better. Let's add that tone to it. Let's give another one. Let's tell another story. I can tell a
Mm.
I can top that story. I
Yeah.
love that actually. It's a bit of sport. And I
Yeah.
think it's great fun. And when women can use that as well and enjoy it, it
Mm.
can be just so engaging. And then you can get into the real thing. But do you find that people are afraid that it might, as I said before, and especially I wonder if women do, that it might just take their seriousness away from them, the fact that they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's quite a big thing
Mm,
for a lot of women in that I come across, certainly women in business, is that they've they've often had to work harder than the men to
mm,
get to where they've got to. And even in, I suppose, the rare occasions where that's not the case, it feels to them like they have to work, they have to be better at everything
mm, mm,
to just to make to level the playing field.
mm,
And that means being a big part of that means being taken seriously.
mm, mm,
I am not, maybe comes from childhood. You know better than me. I'm not a little girl.
mm, mm.
I am here and I deserve to be here. Part of that's being serious. And a the good thing is that when I've worked with women in business where that is the case, most of them realize there's something wrong with that.
Mm.
They they just don't know quite how to fix it. And I'm saying that because I was working with um, a group a couple of weeks ago. These were a mix of men and women who want to be top keynote speakers.
Mm.
So they've been very successful in their careers and now they want to transfer into the speaking industry and share their stories and inspire people and all of that. And there were two women in the group, very successful business women, who I'd seen film of their talk and it was serious. Talk was serious and there were a couple of two or three jokes that they sort of forced in there that you could see their hearts weren't in, but it was like, I'm going to put some humor in somehow. This looks like humor. Bang, there it goes.
Mm.
And then when they arrived, because we did this session online, they were both very funny
Mm.
because they were off duty. They were both naturally funny. And of course, if you're going to be successful in business like these women, you're going to have a lot about you.
Mm.
So there was this naughtiness in a sort of like a just saying the truth as it is
Mm.
that a lot of the best people have. They just say it. You go, oh, you just said the truth. Okay, that's brilliant. And I said, okay, well let's we'll start with some feedback on that. And just said, you are so brilliant as communicators. You're so engaging and inspiring and different and everything anyone would ever want in a speaker. That is you as a human being. And it works. And use this time to allow that to come through because that's the vehicle. It's
Mm.
not just, yes, as we discussed earlier, you have to work bloody hard to get something good. But you also, sometimes some parts of it could be a lot easier than you think.
Mm.
You already are super engaging, funny, dynamic, uh, acerbic, honest, true to yourself. Just do that and trust that it's mostly that is enough.
And then do you go through? So now you've helped them identify who they are because most people don't get feedback. Men,
Yep.
actually, men feedback much more willingly to men in
Mm.
a good way. Men will say, "Oh, well done, Jack. That was brilliant." Women, I'm not saying that women don't do it to each other, but you don't, it's not a regular thing that, when I was working, I didn't go out for drinks or in those days they used to go to strip clubs. And I used to say, I'm not going to the strip club because I can go down to my gym and see naked women down there any time of the day and don't have to drink.
Right. Yeah.
So thanks for that. But you don't get that feedback as a woman as much. So, but men are good at feedbacking. Oh, that was great. Let me buy you a beer. Or how did you do that? Or, yeah, that's really good the way you spoke about that. Women don't get that direct feedback. So you're giving them, the two women you were training, direct feedback. This is who you are, your personalities. You've got things about you that is very powerful. You can go and speak, blah, blah, blah. And then do you go into the detail of what they're speaking about? And
Yeah,
then you go into the detail of when they use their humor.
yeah. Then you can go into into
Yeah.
the detail of it, and you can start building their confidence in that. So, say for instance, you're doing briefly, you're doing a 40-minute speech
Mm,
or keynote, and in the first draft which they were doing, maybe there's 3 or 4 laughs within that which are forced in. Then they do it being themselves
mm,
and picking out a couple of their funny stories and shortening them and making them on point for the talk. And then they build that up to 10 laughs in 40 minutes.
mm,
It's as we said earlier on, it's trusting the process.
mm,
Unless you're a genius, you're not going to go from 0 to 80 laughs in 40 minutes in a couple of weeks.
mm. Of course.
It's just not going to happen. You you have to keep working at it. You have to keep looking for those moments. But gradually they will build up. And there are techniques you can do where you can add what I call safe laughs.
Mm,
So one of the things that gets in the way of business people adding humor is the fear of, what if they don't laugh? Is
mm,
biggest one. And the
mm,
second is, what if I say something that means that I close the business?
mm.
I've said, come up with a line, and they go,
The
oh,
rat in the line.
the rat in the line. And
Yeah.
by the way, he's a multimillionaire now with an online jewelry
Yeah. So,
business. So he's done.
I just sell rubbish.
Yeah, that's it. He said, I sold rubbish. Sun headline. He lost his business, went through trauma, but he's now multimillionaire, and he earns a fortune off the speech about that speech. So he's done all right. But he,
But it's still quite interesting how I'm just highlighting exactly what you're talking about.
yeah,
Mistake.
that's what we're all scared of.
Yeah.
What if I make a joke about people wearing hats, and I discover that everyone there is part of the hat wearing guild of America?
Yeah, or the Chris Rock moment. And not that I'd love to do a whole set about Chris Rock, that slap from Will.
Oh yeah, Will
You know,
Smith slap.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
I know, so there's so much more to it, but that moment that it just gets to somebody. So it's so easily done, isn't it?
and so they're scared of those two big
Yeah,
things,
of course.
and um, but there are, apart from you, number one is you should be using your humor, so
Yeah.
your funny stories, your take on the world,
Mm,
um, all of that stuff. Trust that process. But then there are techniques as a speaker that you can use, which are so-called safe laughs. So in other words, they are laughs where you will get a laugh, because
mm,
as a speaker, you don't have to be a stand-up.
mm,
In fact, people, they don't want to see a stand-up. They want to see you. They want to see your vision of the world. They want to see what you've got. And the gorgeous thing about being a professional speaker is you're allowed to make people cry as well as laugh.
mm.
Yeah, and for a comedian, very rarely does it work. I mean, yeah, there are one or two who've managed to make an audience cry and then pull them up. But you, but you can't. But there are ways, as I say, I call them safe techniques for adding humor. And it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And once you get a you get laugh built on laugh built on laugh, builds confidence in the audience, etc., etc., and there comes a sort of magic point where you don't have to say something very funny at all, and they'll still laugh.
But we're closing shortly because it's been absolutely fascinating. We could go on for a long time, Jack. You're brilliant. But coming back to your personality,
Hmm.
you have the personality and the generosity of personality that encourages people. And I must say that anybody would feel in safe hands with you. And I mean that safe, not only safe, but creatively safe and encouragingly safe, because I think creativity has to be encouraging,
Mm,
has to be generous,
mm.
because otherwise people become hidden and closed. So your generosity in your tone, in the way you speak to people, just allows people to open up and tell you who they are, but you encourage them all the way. So I'm sure anybody listening to this who wants advice as a speaker to be seen through it, which I think is, or in the company to transform the company or to write a script or anything, you must be the absolute model, the perfect person for those. Through all of this, to be able to do that is quite an art in itself, and it's taken years to develop.
Mm.
It doesn't come easily. You respect the craft.
Yeah.
Also, you've got a gift in yourself, not only in your, as I say, in your generosity of spirit, but the way you handle people, that gentleness, but also the direction with the gentleness that you allow people to come out and show themselves. Fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Maria.
So, where can people find you? And you've got a book coming out. So, go through all those points where people can find you.
Okay, so thank you, and thank you, Maria, for this. I've loved this chat.
It's been
Really, so,
brilliant. I love
oh
it.
no, I've just been a ball. A ball, as you say. I'll happily carry on, but anyway, so they
We've
can
been going
find
for an
me.
hour and a half, you know that.
I know it feels like it's like
I know,
you.
we'll have to do more because
We'll have to
it's
do more. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah,
absolutely.
it's so,
Yeah.
so easy.
So you can find me at standupanddeliver.co.uk
Great.
is my speaker and communication. And then when it comes to business and humor and
Mm,
helping businesses become more productive through using humor, so that's culture, creativity, and communication, improve those aspects, you'll become
mhm,
more successful. That's freeyourfunny.com.
mm.
Then my book that's coming out is Why So Serious?
Great.
So, why so serious? And that is on how businesses can make themselves more successful, more productive, more creative, etc., etc. And you can have it all. You know, that thing of you can genuinely be part of a profitable, hugely successful company and enjoy it
Mm.
at the same time.
I love it.
In
When did
fact,
you?
it'll help you be even more successful.
No, I agree, especially with you directing them. And tell me, where can they buy your book?
Well, the book is not out yet, so you
Yeah,
can't buy the book. But the I have got another book out which is on communication, which is called Virtual Presentation Mastery.
amazing.
So that has an awful lot of tips on, because I think if you can communicate successfully in the virtual world, in the online world, then you can do it anywhere.
That's a great idea, actually.
Because it is so hard to do
So
a
hard to do
Teams call when you've got a
that.
sea of blank faces
Mm.
and make it work. If you can make it work there, you can make it do it anywhere.
Yeah.
So
But
that is,
where's your gift for people is exactly that, to draw out their ability and to encourage them with their ability to be creative, to be funny. And the world needs more funny.
yeah.
And well done, Jack.
Oh
It's a
well, thank
pleasure.
you.
Jack Milner, thank you.